Have a seat. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am so happy with the crowd this morning. Kickoff event. We got the word out on LinkedIn and through Clifford and some other people that I'm going to thank in a little while, but I'm excited that you're all here and that you're all interested in working on your leadership skills. Who are we? Most of us are IT leaders of some sort. Directors and managers is who this group was originally designed to serve. People who were promoted from fabulous individual contributors to some level of incompetence as a leader. I'm sure you're familiar with that, Peter Principle, right? It happened to many of us. In fact, it's very common in engineering disciplines and especially in IT these days. If you have direct reports or if you have designs on having direct reports in an IT position, this meeting is for you. Generally speaking, we keep the sales reps out of the meeting unless they've helped promote the meeting or are extra eyes and hands for me. 3 focuses on this meeting. Networking, which you've done a fabulous job on. Everybody seems to know each other. You've either worked together or you're neighbors. Mentorship, finding mentors and being mentors. We have a formalized program in some of our other markets, and we can consider doing that here as well. And then hearing 2 speakers each meeting on leadership skills. Bathrooms down the hall by the elevator. There's also a unisex bathroom just outside the door. There's a little bit of breakfast here. I apologize, I probably didn't get enough coffee. I need to remember to order less food and more coffee when it comes to IT people. And we'll be done at 10 o'clock, so you can get back to your office or get back to your PJs in your home office. The way you stay informed about this meeting, by the way, my name is Doug Thies, and I'm the founder of IT Leaders Indy. We started this group 7 years ago in Indianapolis. We now hold it in Louisville, and we hold it up here starting today, and we're going to continue on with this. I won't hold that out till the end of the meeting. We're excited about the engagement up here already, and we're going to continue on. We're probably going to do 3 or 4 meetings next year, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. The best way to find out what's going on up here is itleaders.org/NE Indiana. I also have a LinkedIn company page that you should be able to remember that, don't you think? Yeah. Just look up IT Leaders Northeast Indiana and you'll find it on LinkedIn. Follow that, we post on there, but the best way to stay informed is the website. Sign up for the mailing list so that we can keep you informed and just check that periodically for what's going on. If you like what's going on here and you're a social media type of person, take a few pictures of the speakers or the crowds or your friends and post those on social. Use the hashtag IT Leaders NE Indiana, if you would please, or text them to me so I can post them in a recap of this event. That's my mobile number right up on the screen there. Okay. This is your part of the meeting. This is your part of the announcements. We like to bring the community together, and my company, Expedient, allowed me to start this many years ago so that we could really help you meet each other and do better in your leadership job, because we think better IT leaders are as critically important to successful IT as infrastructure and development and project management and all the other disciplines. This is the part where you talk about who has open roles, and if you're looking for your next position, you can talk about that as well. Anyone in the room have open roles that they'd like to mention? Casey.
Militia consulting is growing into northern Indiana, especially South Bend, looking for some IT leadership, like help desk and network infrastructure.
Okay, help desk and network infrastructure, Motor Consulting, great company. Casey's done a fabulous job of helping me promote this event the first time around. You, sir.
My name is Tom. Indiana Tech IT department is looking for a service desk supervisor, someone who is servant leader inclined. This will be a trained to manage position. So We run our technical support for faculty, staff, and classrooms by student employees. So this job will be directly mentoring, fostering, and monitoring these student employees.
Super cool. Thank you. Anyone else have open roles? Mark?
My name is Mark Yoder, work at 8020 on US 30 down the road, and we're looking for a software developer.
Software developer at 8020 near Columbia City, or on the way to Columbia City.
Correct.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Jerry Starks. I'm at position Southland, Northern Indiana, otherwise known as PHP. And we are looking for a project agility manager, so to help us manage IT-related projects that we have.
Project manager at PHP. Anyone else?
Yeah, my name is Todd Hargis. I'm with Nuclear Health Networks, EHS.
Yeah, Todd.
And right now I've got opening for senior network engineer, emphasis on voice and wireless, and then also some help desk positions from that perspective. So,
Help desk and senior network engineer. Those network engineers are hard to find right
yes,
now.
they are.
Yeah, they're tricky. All right, anyone else? Bob?
Bob Francis, Steel Dynamics. We're looking for a couple of senior developers at both our New Millennium Building Systems Division and our Columbia City Structural and Rail Mill.
Fabulous. Software developers at Steel Dynamics. Yes, sir.
I'm also Steel Dynamics. My name is Nick Kimberly. I'm with the Copper Division in New Haven. We're looking for a senior D365 developer for our ERP system.
Okay, D365 developer, ERP. It's like doing brain surgery, right? While you're walking. Okay, Travis.
Also with PHP Positions Health Plan, we're looking for an information security analyst. This is an entry-level position that's designed for a ramping up to a 5-year built-in milestones and initiatives to complete so that their salary is appropriate for that 5-year mark. And we're looking for entry-level, so somebody that's just dedicated, hardworking. Those kind of intangibles are what we're really looking for. So if you have somebody that might not be in the field already, but has STAR in their bio, you know, send them my way.
The Indiana Tech guys in the back of the room are nodding and winking at each other, so you may want to check with them after the meeting. Is that all? Anyone else? All right, how about looking for a position? Anyone looking for their next opportunity and who's willing to talk about it out loud? Okay, well, that's good news. It sounds like we have full employment, at least in this sample size. I want to talk about other events that are upcoming if you like what you find here. Our next Indy meeting, we've been running an Indy for 7 years, is November 7th at Expedient, the company that I work for in Carmel, Indiana. It's about an hour and a half from here. The CIO of First Merchants Bank is speaking. He's going to be talking about his leadership journey. He's an interesting guy, one of the toughest leaders I've ever worked with in my sales career in the past, and he's really changed a lot over time, so I'm really anxious to hear that. And then Calvin Hendricks Parker, who quietly is the CTO for one of the world's best Python developers. They do huge projects for companies that you may have heard of, like NASA and the DoD. He's really going to be talking about keeping developers engaged, so I would encourage you, if either of those topics sounds interesting, to attend those. In Louisville, a week later, we have the Louisville peer group, and I realize that's a long way from here, but two really interesting topics: increasing your influence. I don't know if you have figured it out yet. I'm sure you have, that when you're a director, you need to manage in all directions. You need to manage your boss, you need to manage laterally, and you need to manage downward. So Jay's going to be talking about that, and Katura Jenkins from Humana is going to be talking about intentional leadership. She's fabulous as well. So that's November 14th. All of these are on itleaders.org. Other events that are local, we love cross-promoting events. So I just wrote down the ones that I know about. I'd love you to stand up and mention the ones you know about briefly if we could. Let's start with REF Forum, which was critical. The CIO Forum that's located here was critical to standing this meeting up today. So Clifford, do you want to talk about that?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Doug. My name is Clifford Clark. I know many of you here I know that there's quite a few CIOs here in the room, actually quite a few of them that are part of the REF, or Renaissance Executive Forum, CIO Forum. The REF Forum is a little bit slightly different than what you'll see here at IT Leaders, but one of the things that I really like is that I'm a grow the pie type of guy, so there's enough space for everyone. And the opportunity with IT Leaders to kind of create the pipeline of people moving up their career path and onto the higher role. But the CIO Forum is a mobile forum. We meet everywhere from Allen County, basically Fort Wayne, all the way over to St. Joe County. So we're in the top third of the state. We have individuals that come from central part of the state, all the way from Richmond, Indiana, all the way west, actually in Illinois, actually make up our forum. We meet basically about 12 times a year. We have a 2-day retreat and field trips, and so it's a little bit longer form than what you'll see here today. If you want more information about that, by all means, just let me know. Do you want me to talk about ISSA, or do you want Brian to talk about ISSA?
Either way, Brian, do you want to talk about it?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Brian Valentine. I'm the president of Northeast Indiana ISSA, just an information security organization chapter here. ISSA is an international organization. That's just the Fort Wayne chapter. We try to have meetings, roughly once a month-ish. But yeah, hoping to have something in November. I was talking with Adam back here and trying to have potentially a meeting at Ash Brokerage, or what used to be the Ash building, the Skyline building downtown. But yeah, so cybersecurity is kind of where we live, and there's definitely some faces that have been at meetings before, and thank you, Doug, for allowing us to kind of cross promote with him.
Happy to do it. Adam, you had a couple things? Oh,
Yeah,
no,
just ISSA.
Mr. Cody, you.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Matt Covey. I'm the owner of B-Sides Fort Wayne. If you haven't heard of B-Sides, it's a local chapter of kind of a larger international organization, B-Sides. It's a IT security related thing. We have a yearly conference coming up next year in May. We have a very large, about 400 people on our online Discord that encompasses all the way from a lot of Indiana Tech students to IT professionals and IT security. If you have any other questions, feel free to hit me up or go to bsidesfortwayne.org. Thanks.
And I wanted to mention one more thing about our IT community. I think we have a very strong IT community here in Fort Wayne. COVID kind of rocked us a little bit and made us, all scattered. But there's a lot of good people, and there's also a lot of good institutions. I'd like to welcome you to Indiana Tech. It's my alma mater twice over. I'm working on a third here. So the bottom line is that we're glad to have you here. And not only Indiana Tech, but there are a lot of other great institutions producing great IT people. Now, I will say Indiana Tech's gotten a couple of cyber awards, Midwest regional computer competition, things going on like that, so I'll brag a little bit. But the point of the matter is that there's a lot of good schools turning out a lot of good students that would love to be in your organizations and companies. And I know that a lot of times we're looking for the people who are a little less green and want to move on real fast. But we also need opportunities for internships and things of that nature. So if you have that, please also let us know. And one last thing, there's also InfoGuard here in Fort Wayne, and I am the Education Facilities Section Chief for that. I'm taking too much of Doug's time, so I'll step back and let him take the rest of the show. Thank you.
Any other events that we need to talk about that this group could benefit from learning about? All right, sounds good. How you can help this group grow. We're going to cover this quickly so we can get on with it. Link with me on LinkedIn. My name is Doug Thies. Thies is spelled V-is, like the two little words. I am probably going to be reaching out to you in the next month to get some feedback from you face-to-face, whether it be in person or on Zoom or Teams or your platform of choice. I really want to hear what you have to think about this and how we might improve the meeting over time, because we're going to continue with it in Fort Wayne. Suggest leadership topic speakers, not only guest CIO speakers and guest IT leader speakers, but if you know consultants who work on things like dealing with difficult people, we don't have that problem in IT, but if you know folks who really help on other segments of leadership, I'd like to hear about those people as well. I've got people I can bring from India. I'd much rather work with local people if we can. Spread the word, tell your coworkers and on the soccer field and at church about this. If they're IT professionals and they have direct reports, it's a good fit for them. We're recording this. You probably see we have stereo cameras in the back. We post these on Expedient's YouTube channel, so it's very easy to find these videos. And we just spun up, we're extracting the audio out of the speaker topics themselves, and there is now a podcast called IT Leaders. So when you're driving to work, you can listen to some of the other talks. There's about 14 of them up right now on IT Leaders, so you can subscribe to that like you do any other podcast. And it is very likely we're going to start this in South Bend next year as well. So thanks to Casey and a few other folks up in the South Bend area, it's very likely that we'll do something similar in South Bend. Anyone here from South Bend or closer to South Bend than Fort Wayne right now? Fabulous. We'd like you to come to both, but if one's more convenient than the other, we understand. Finally, gratitude. My company, Expedient, we're a data center, and we're one of the biggest VMware clouds in the country. They have allowed me to spend their time, or my time and their money, on putting these meetings together. We believe in helping people be the best leaders they can be, as I mentioned. Indiana Tech, thank you for hosting. REF CIO Forum, this meeting wouldn't have happened without them. And thanks to Casey and Mosier Consulting for promoting this over time. Today's speaker, we're going to start with Jennifer Ruth Green. Jennifer's military background, I think you'll find fascinating. She's going to be talking about discipline. And then Bob Francis will follow her up with vulnerability when it comes to leadership. All right, let me do the AV work here, Jennifer, and I think we're ready for you.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Jennifer Ruth Green, and it's an honor to be here today. The short version about why I'm here is I had the opportunity to serve as the CIO at the 122nd Fighter Wing out here in the fort. And so with me actually in the back is Wendy Davis. She was an our honorary commander at the time for the Mission Support Group. And so she spent time there helping us as a wing get into the community and things like that. And then Liz Newman is next to her. She was definitely a friend, colleague of mine, helped me. I ran for Congress in 2022 during that cycle in Northwest Indiana. And then you'll see Lacey out and between cameras, and Lacey is the COO of Battle Proven Leadership. And so she helps me a lot, and it's an honor to have her here with us today as well. I've had the opportunity to serve in the military for the past 22 years, and so graduated from the United States Air Force Academy. And took that time to get a lot of technical training, but largely started off training as a pilot, and then did the majority of my career on active duty as a counterintelligence agent, vetting and recruiting spies downrange to prepare for our objectives. And currently I am an executive officer to a 1-star, and his responsibility is to oversee the Nevada Air Guard. So that's what I get the opportunity to do now. I'm incredibly passionate about leadership, and that was the foundation of Battle Proven Leadership, and some of the principles that I've learned from my combat time in serving as the CIO there at the fort. And so it's something that I find is incredibly important. There are a couple topics that we talk about that people are incredibly interested in as I go about and have the opportunity to do seminars. One is how to handle discipline, and the other is how to run an effective meeting. And I'm all about practical leadership. I think we get a lot of people who are information fat and application skinny, and people who understand and will read books but don't understand how to practically input or inject the information into their particular workspaces. And so today we're going to talk about how to effectively handle discipline. And I think it's incredibly important for us as leaders to understand that conveying value is the most important thing we can do for our people. People will crawl over rocks for you if they believe that you have their best interest at heart. And being in combat, it's important for me to think through how do I get people to, at any level, regardless of what the responsibility is, to understand that they could, what I ask them to do could cost them everything up to and including their lives. And I recognize that's not the standard of everyday business, but how do you infiltrate that sentiment, break down those barriers, and make sure that people are ready to perform how you need them to perform? So executing high levels of leadership is something that I think is incredibly important, and that's what we do at Battle Proven Leadership. I like this quote by Gus Lee, specifically when talking about discipline. Conflict aversion is the organizational bubonic plague of our times. It is cowardice wearing a smart, politically correct hat. Oftentimes we find that dealing with discipline or handling issues, confronting issues without being confrontational is something that we don't have the practical task or practical skills to be able to do or to be able to work through. And sometimes it's easier for us to try to avoid it, to delegate it, to let things continue to sit and fester. But at the end of the day, what we cannot allow is for people or events or activities to become distractions. We have to keep our processes tight and streamlined for the sake of what we need to do. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Confronting issues without being confrontational. How do we convey value? By exercising practical and effective discipline as leaders. When we have expectations that are unmet, that's exactly what issues are. When I say the word issues, it's replaceable with the phrase unmet expectations. So it's not a matter of if it's going to happen in your organization, it's a matter of when. And you as the leader have to ensure that you don't overlook it. Because if you don't address it, who will? And you have to address these events before they become a distraction. If you allow them to sit and fester, it's going to, just like a cancer, sit and infect and grow. And it is your responsibility, my responsibility, our responsibility as leaders to handle things as quickly and efficiently as possible. I don't know how many of you have heard of the 90-10 rule, but you spend 90% of your time on 10% of the people, right? And when you're dealing with discipline, it's always the same faces all the time. And so those are the people that you're going to have to think through and evaluate, but that kind of makes it easy because you understand those people and how to deal with them personally. Every time you have an unmet expectation, it is going to be a function of two things, will or skill. We'll talk about what they look like, but the most important part that you have to remember is that you have to determine which of those factors is the causation for somebody's specific event or failure to meet your expectation, and you have to do it before you engage with them. If you fail to do that, you can go off the rails and cause a lot more difficulty. One of the things that I heard, I was in Nevada this weekend, and I had the opportunity to connect with one of my mentors. And essentially what I got from our conversation was the reality that at lower levels, people become distractions, right? So if you have somebody who should be performing a function and they're on their phone, it distracts other people, or it doesn't get the work done as quickly as it can. But at the upper echelons, as senior leaders, as CIOs, CEOs, that kind of level, you become a disruptor. And there's a clear difference. A distraction is something that you can kind of put off, fix, whatever, but a senior leader becomes a disruptor, like a tsunami, an earthquake, something that disrupts the entire train. And so if you as a senior leader are not handling issues, it is more than a distraction. Because now people are looking around and saying, these are distractions, but they continue to build. And if you have 10 distractions, they're continuing to grow. And if you're not leading, you are the disruptor. So you have to understand that concept. I have to understand that concept and have to be proactive in ensuring that I solve problems. But rationale is important to determine prior to engaging. Now, again, will versus skill. When expectations are unmet, it's going to be one of the two. Will means an individual chooses not to meet the expectation. I'm willingly not going to do what you want me to do. Now that is an individually owned issue, and that results in consequences, whatever the consequence may be, and we'll talk about how to deal with that. But the other is skill. That means a person is incapable of meeting the expectation. That's owned by the supervision, and that results in training or getting assistance for that particular person. So we'll break those down a little bit. Let's talk about figuring out which is which. These are some questions that ideally you would have asked before you gave someone a task. However, if you didn't do that and they weren't properly equipped, these are some of the things that you can find out on the back end. So let's say someone failed to meet your expectation. I tell my troops, I say I need you to be in the right place at the right time in the right uniform. If that's 0730 for the first scheduled event, you're wearing the right uniform, that's when I need you to be there. And I tell them, the difference between a responsible person and an irresponsible person is when you communicate. If you communicate that you didn't come in to work on time, and you tell me 30 minutes before and say, hey, I'm running behind, there's a lot of traffic, there's an accident, I just looked it up on Google Maps, and you let me know, I'm fine, I can adjust. But if after the fact you show up and you're all scraggly and you're not in the right place at the right time, I've already had time to be upset about the fact that you're not there, and then you say, oh, there was traffic, it was crazy, there were so many things happening. The difference is, you are responsible or irresponsible simply based on when you communicate in regards to that timeline. And so when communicating with people, I want to understand that they understand what I've asked them to do. So again, ideally you would ask these questions beforehand, but let's just say post, expectations have not been met. Did you understand what I asked you to do? Did you understand that you're supposed to be on time? Did you understand that I need you to pull this stack? Did you understand that I need you to run these cables? Did you understand that the security of this element was what we were focusing on this week? Did you understand that your deadline was 1600 today, 4 o'clock in the afternoon? Yes, yes ma'am I did, no ma'am I didn't, whatever. Did you have the tools you needed? Were you equipped? Because if you weren't equipped, again, that goes into will versus skill. If I didn't equip you, that's on me. And if I ask you to do something that's outside of your skill set, then I can't be upset when you haven't met my expectation. Were you trained on this task? Different questions to ask. Explore. Will versus skill. So let's say you ask those questions and you make a clear determination. And you say, okay, this is skill. The skill section breaks down into personal or professional. Sometimes people professionally are not skilled to complete a task, and sometimes they're not personally skilled to complete a task, and we'll talk about both. Professional means they're not trained. That means that you need to take responsibility and provide training. So take responsibility for your section. So we talked a little bit about this. We provided the example of, let's just say you have an admin colleague, somebody who's responsible just for simple records keeping, and you ask them to run a network. Well, it's an irrational ask, but you can't be upset. But I want to talk today about how this impacted me when I was exploring will versus skill, specifically concerning the personal side when somebody wasn't equipped to do their job. I was a young captain and I was sitting in my office and I had a tech sergeant, a mid-level manager, come into my office and say to me, hey ma'am, I'm supervising this staff sergeant. How many of you are military in here, by the way? Prior military? Okay, good. At least I always work on my vocabulary because I get extra comfortable and then afterwards people say, I didn't understand half of what you meant. But thank you for you four. So sitting in my office and I'm a junior officer responsible for a section. I'm a deputy commander of a nuclear unit. And so he comes in and he says, hey ma'am, we have Staff Sergeant so-and-so, a subordinate of his, who is failing to do her job. Essentially, she shows up to work, and she's here on a 12-hour shift, but when I come into work, she's on the night shift, I come in the morning, I see her work product, and her work product is less than perfect, and she hasn't completed the things that I've asked her to do. And so for the last several weeks, what's been happening is she stays after and takes time to do this extra work, which means she's here for a 14-hour day. Largely, it wouldn't be a big deal. However, in the nuclear enterprise, it's our responsibility to make sure that if you are any part of that, you have to be on a status which requires you to have crew rest. So it's your responsibility to make sure that you are sharp mentally and you have the acuity. In fact, in this status, you can't take your own medicine. You can't show up and take sinus meds and be drowsy and hitting the red button, right? Good plan, good life plan for the world. And so you have to have crew rest. So her timeline was starting to extend into this particular breach potentially. So we were like, what's happening? So he said, would you support providing a permanent file record document, that non-judicial punishment that says essentially you failed to do your job and we need to record it? And I said, she's a really good troop. What's going on? He said, I don't know, ma'am, she's just not doing her work. And I said, I understand. I said, go back and see what's happening. And so he says, yes, ma'am. So he walks out of my office, and then I continue to do my work. And the next morning, I come into work, and he comes to me, and he says, ma'am, can I come in? Sure. And he sits down in a chair in my office, and then he just starts crying. I say, okay, not every day a grown man in uniform starts crying at my desk, but what's happening? So he just said, ma'am, I just want to say thank you. He said, I want to say thank you because this is the situation. Thank you for sending me to go ask questions. I went to go talk to Sergeant so-and-so, and it turns out that she and her husband are having incredible difficulties. And those difficulties are causing her to not want to be home. She's having problems at home. She doesn't want to be home, but she's also not sleeping. She's not sleeping because they're preparing to get a divorce, and because she's not sleeping, she wants to be at work. She's tired at work, can't do her stuff, and then ends up failing to meet expectations and is now having to stay a couple hours after to do the things that she needs to do. And resultantly, here I was ready to punish her, but instead I was able to give her the number of the chaplain, the number of the director of psychological health, the lawyers, everybody that she could want to feasibly connect with, and given her the time and opportunity to handle those things so that she can get better. And he said, I just want to say thank you because I went in guns blazing when in reality I should have figured out the problem first. And so, happy end to the story, that troop actually ended up reconciling with her husband, and she and her husband welcomed a daughter, and then she took an assignment serving Air Force One, working on security for that enterprise, that piece of the enterprise. And she was at that moment emotionally incapable of doing her job. And he would have never explored that had he not been willing to ask the questions. And sometimes when we look at skill, we have to consider, is it personal or professional? Asking those questions, is anything going on? Is everything okay? And you can get to the bottom of some of these things pretty quickly. All right, let's just say somebody with wanton, brazen disregard says, I'm not doing that. Largely, that's not the case, but at times, people are not going to meet your expectations. You've prepared them, they're mentally, emotionally, physically capable to do the job, and they just fail to do it. That's when you willingly choose not to do what I've asked you to do. How do we deal with that? Well, this is where we get to talking about meetings. This is where we get to talking about how we provide reconciliation and help somebody to be re-engaged willfully into the program and wanting them to be back as a part of the team. So there are 6 key principles that I've personally identified here. And again, all of these things are the brainchild of my mind, so I don't think you're going to find them anywhere else, but I'm a big fan of the thought that nothing is new in leadership under the sun. It's definitely repackaged. So these are just some of the things that I think. You can take them, and if there are things that you would love to add or subtract or discuss, please do feel free to let me know, and we can talk about it later. But we'll talk through these pretty extensively over the next 15 minutes. Number 1, focus on the process. 2, emotionally prepare, physically prepare for your meeting with your colleague, prepare for two-way communication, document the meeting, and then facilitate your desired end state. Focus on the process. Every time we do literally anything as leaders, we have to start with why. Simon Sinek tells us that, but it's so incredibly necessary. We have to figure out why we're doing what we're doing to understand the strategy. And as leaders, we go back every day to our why. If we say, hey, I want to be the best Midwest IT provider as measured by these 3 goals, great. And if you say, we're going to take all of our business and do business in California, well, you're not helping yourself because you have a clear definition of your why. You want to serve the Midwest. Super easy example of getting off track. However, what's important is you have to understand your desired outcome. And your desired outcome should be reconciliation, rehabilitation, helping somebody to get back into the team. It shouldn't be a matter of pride. It shouldn't be a matter of suppressing egos. It shouldn't be a matter of changing someone's ideals or ideologies. Changing behavior and reconciliation into the team should be your key priorities when you're considering discipline. You want to make sure that you want to make people better. If you don't want to make people better, question whether or not this is the right role for you. If you're like, oh, I want to make this person look bad merely because it allows me to look better, poor choice. Poor choice for you, poor role and responsibility for you in leadership. Think through those things and process them. Focus on the process. Second, emotionally prepare for a meeting. If you're going to connect with someone, you have to think through what you're going to do. The first thing I would ask you to do is to commit to respond and not react. There's a clear difference between those 2 words. Responding is something that is intentional. Reacting is something that is natural. And our first reaction sometimes when people don't meet our expectations is to put a knife hand in their face and say, how could you? Why would you do that? What made you think this was acceptable? And I realize part of that is the military society. Like, we don't really yell at people in the civilian world. I understand. And I've had opportunities in the civilian world and understand completely. But you've had bosses who fly off the handle, and raise your hand if you were like, that was a good life plan. I really enjoyed that session. No hands. Good. All right. So you have to commit to respond, not react. So you say, if there's a situation that you need to deal with immediacy, you can put a pause on it. You can put a break and you can say, hey, give me your name, please. Sean. Sean, we're going to talk about this, but we'll set up a time tomorrow and we'll figure it out. So be prepared, but we're going to talk about this. And that conversation allows me the time to step back, not react, and just step away. I have determined in my personal life as a leader to never discipline while I was angry. That came from me being a freshman at the Air Force Academy. I remember we had sophomores as our primary trainers. And one of the things we would do, and every time I tell these stories, I realize how ridiculous it sounds, to tell about the fact that you wake up at 6 in the morning and you stand in the hallway and you shout information that tells upperclassmen what they're going to wear that day, what the uniform is, what they're going to eat for breakfast, what they're serving, and 2 news articles, as well as all of the airplanes in the Air Force inventory. I get it. It's weird. So we wake up, we're doing the thing, and sophomores are our primary trainers. It's a Monday, and we had a trainer who was not openly antagonistic. He was always holding us to standards, and so we would do push-ups, we would do sit-ups, do the things, and he would ask for different knowledge pieces. Cadet Green, what is the crew complement of the F-16? You say, sir, the F-16, C/D, Fighting Falcon, nickname Viper, General Dynamics, manufacturer, crew complement, pilot. And that's the answer. So anyway, we're down on the ground doing push-ups, doing flutter kicks, and that day he's openly antagonistic. He's very difficult, and he's like, 10 push-ups, 9 of those didn't count, do 10 more. And so we're just doing them, and we're tired, and we're sweaty, and we're getting ready to go to class, and it's just a long, laborious event. And I remember he's just being cruel because he can. And come to find out later, that weekend, his girlfriend had broken up with him from home. So he was going through the emotions, but taking out his anger and frustration on us. And I remember as a 19-year-old, I committed that day that I will never exercise discipline while I'm angry. And I will make sure that I hold back, step back, because it's so important to respond and not react. And so when I consider how I'm going to connect with people, I need to center and focus myself first. I pray, I think about what I want to do, I think about what I want the environment to be, and then I think, okay, this particular individual, how does he or she respond to correction? Sometimes they're sensitive, sometimes people are stubborn. For me personally, if you just say, Jennifer Ruth, I'm disappointed in you. Okay, all right, okay. But if you're like, Jennifer Ruth, how could you? Like, I don't know, I just didn't do it. I don't know. And I'm generally stubborn if you approach me with crazy. I'll bring crazy to your crazy. But if you're sensitive, I'm the sensitive type. If you just say, I'm disappointed, I don't think you should have done that, then my behavior will change very quickly. But people deal with things differently. They deal with situations differently, and that's part of getting to know your people. We talk a little bit about that throughout the rest of the course. But that's something that you have to think through. And if somebody is sensitive, it might be an easy meeting. But if it's not, and they're stubborn, then you might need to consider, do I need to bring another person into this meeting? If we're gonna have a meeting, maybe it's just, who do I bring? And the question is, should I bring their supervisor? Most likely, yes. Don't bring a peer. Don't bring someone who they're going to have to talk to the next day about it. Bring a supervisor. If they're your direct report, bring a supervisor that's at your level. If you're a CIO, bring your CFO in or bring your COO in and have them sit so that they can observe. And it may be a safety factor. It may be someone who's a witness. Oftentimes, somebody can turn around a one-on-one conversation, especially when it comes to discipline, and say, they never told me that, or I didn't know that this was an issue. And so it's important for you to consider for your personal safety and also for the record that you have somebody else in the room. Then you need to physically prepare. And I'll accelerate this. I know we have time. But physically prepare. Commit to punish in public or praise in public, punish in private. This does not go for spot corrections. Spot corrections are things where you need to tell somebody, put a hard hat on, or use a ladder, or we don't talk like that here. Those are things that you need to be very clear and direct and bold about and be unashamedly confident that you are making a correction on the spot and it needs to be done with immediacy. However, if you're going to have a situation where somebody's been late multiple times, then you might want to set up a situation where the two of you are sitting next to one another. So you can just sit next to them and say, hey, you've been late a couple times, talk to me about that. But if it's heavy discipline, you have to fire someone, you have to prepare for something, then you might want a physical barrier for safety, or you might want a physical barrier for the sake of establishing the presence that they need to understand that they're there and you're here and they messed up. So think about that. But also in preparing your environment, think about the fact that it's going to be a hard conversation. So you might want bottles of water, people are going to get choked up, it's hard to talk. You might want tissues if they start to cry, things like that. Consider your environment and physically prepare for that. Also, timing is incredibly important. First of all, the timing between the infraction and the discipline. How many of you have children in here? Okay, a lot of you. Can you imagine if you were like, you had a 10-year-old, they're like, when you were 3, you spilled your food, you're in trouble. It's ridiculous, right? And it's the same kind of concept. Obviously, that's out of control. But if you don't discipline with near immediacy, then the fact that you're disciplining loses all of its value. Somebody may not be able to understand why, you may not be able to research or understand what's happening and go through the process effectively. I recommend disciplining early in the day. Why? Because you have the opportunity to follow up during, afterwards, later on in the day. So if you discipline early in the day, you have the chance to sit across from someone and say, hey, my expectations weren't met, let's talk about it, handle the process appropriately. And then you have the opportunity to observe their behavior, right? You have the opportunity to say, this person's okay. If they're a bawling mess, if there's somebody that just can't handle it, or they didn't, they're like, I didn't know, I got blindsided, or oh, you just found out that I embezzled $30,000, whatever. Like, you have to make sure that they're okay. And if you can think through the process, at the end of the day, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, if you're not going to see them until the next morning at 8 o'clock, that's a lot of hours between you knowing whether they're okay or not. If they go home and they binge drink, if they go home and they're speeding, if they're driving drunk, whatever it is, or worst case scenario, they decide that they're going to hurt themselves or somebody else, right? You don't have the situational awareness on that. So discipline early in the day, connect later on, and we'll talk about that. And also do it on a weekday for the same reason. Because if you do it on a Friday and you don't see them till Monday, then you have that time lapse that's going to create difficulty. Next, I want to ask you to consider promoting two-way communication. This has to be a conversation. When you are talking to someone else, very rarely do I use the tool that this becomes a monologue. If it becomes a monologue, it's because someone is stubborn, it's because someone's not paying attention, it's because someone's not owning up to the reality that they've created a distraction or nay, a disruption according to the level of which they serve in our organization. So questions stir the conscience, accusations harden the will. If you hear nothing else that I say today, I would ask that you take that, you write that down, and you consider that long term. Questions stir the conscience, accusations harden the will. What do I mean by that? When you knife hand someone and say, what's your name? Jen. I like it. Jen, you are underperforming. Figure it out, get it together. People don't usually respond to that. Hey Jen, you're late today. What's going on? And then you can tell me your story, and I can understand more about your character, how you understand discipline, where you understand your role is in the company, and I can say things like, yeah, I get that. I understand that it's like you may have to leave earlier or whatever it is. We can solve the problem more effectively, but commit to two-way conversation, and that starts by asking questions, leading with open-ended questions. Some opening lines you can see. This is what I know. Can you fill me in on why you made that choice? And people will tell you. And they will also feel happy because they can share their side of the story. And they don't walk in, of course they're going to walk in with fear and trepidation, but you can help them to feel comfortable by establishing the environment and providing an opportunity for them to share their story. Then you have to clearly communicate the unmet expectation and the expected conduct. You made this joke. It is absolutely inappropriate. I can't allow it to continue. This is the type of behavior that we cannot have in our organization. I want an organization where people and our culture is first and foremost, and people feel comfortable being here. When you say those things, you undermine my ability to do that. So be very clear, and don't be vague. Hey, it's not a good idea to do stuff. Thanks, see you later. No, be very clear so that people can understand, and then also so that they know your expectations to be able to execute them. Not just so that they know it, so that they can feel it and do it. All right? Then we're on number 5, document the conversation. This is incredibly important. Immediately after the conversation happens, prepare for future conversations by taking notes. You can do it informally by merely just scribbling the 5 W's and an H, who, what, when, where, why, and how. Or you can do it formally, type a memo. And these don't have to be public. You don't have to put them on a public domain. You don't have to send them to HR. They can sit as files on your computer. On 17 October 2023, I talked to Jen about being late for the 3rd time. She said it's because her alarm doesn't work. We focused on and talked about practical reasons why a supervisor needs to be on time, and I bought her a new alarm clock. Whatever. Throw that in, take those notes. These are going to be helpful because when you're looking at, when the colleague comes back and says, I'm late for the 4th time, you can say, hey, on the 17th I talked with you about this behavior. On the 13th I talked to you about this behavior. And you can say, for reference, this is what happened, this is what we talked about. What am I missing? How do I connect with you? How do I communicate to you that this is incredibly important? And then also for HR, if you're talking about salary raises, evaluations, all of those types of things, it's important for you to understand, for them to understand the picture that you're painting. And if you're like, don't promote this person, don't pay this person more, or fire this person at the very worst, then you have no capability to back up anything that you've said without having clear documentation. So document, document, document. All right? Then you want to facilitate your desired end state. We talked at the beginning, what is your why? If you want them to be rehabilitated, you're going to have to make that a clear part of your process. Help them to feel valued and not punished. And we'll talk about some practical ways to do that. Follow up before the end of the day. I recommend saying at the end of your meeting, hey, let's meet together today at 3:30. I just want to pop in and I want to answer any questions you may have. I have learned that there are people whose style, Lacey specifically, her style is to kind of let things mull over in her mind. And then 10 years later, she's like, hey, you remember that meeting you said blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, no, I don't remember. She's like, okay, but let me just tell you how I feel about it. I'm like, okay, Lacey, thanks. She's better than that. It's not 10 years, it's like 5. So you want people who have to sit and ruminate and think about things to be able to connect back with you. And so at the end of the day, they may say, you know what, I really appreciated this, or I was really bothered by this, or I don't think this is accurately, like you understood me when I said X, Y, Z. And so when they come back at the end of the day, that may be the conversation they want to have, and you can have a calmer conversation, and they don't feel intimidated, and they know that they're welcome, but also it facilitates that ability to reintegrate them back to the team. And so they may not have anything to say, but that pop-in, you just say, hey, you know what? I'm glad you're a part of the team. Thanks so much for listening today. I really appreciate you taking my feedback. Thank you so much. I look forward to tomorrow. Have a great night. And then also have a positive handoff. There's difficulty to be had in these situations. If you had somebody in the room with you, great. Let that person escort them out to their work center. Or if there's a friend that they want, that they choose, or if your company has a director of psychological health or a chaplain or something like that, bring them and allow them to come and have classified isn't the right word, but to have a confidential conversation with somebody so they can just vent or sit or cry or whatever, but somebody has that positive handoff to know, hey, this person's not okay, and I am taking responsibility to take them back to their car, to take them back to wherever they're going, if they just need to have time to be calm. So I would encourage you to have somebody set up to do that. You obviously don't want to tell their business, but if you were to say to their supervisor, if that person wasn't in the meeting, hey, Sean, I'm going to talk to Jen. If you would come to my office around 3:30, she'll be out by then. If you would just kind of wait around and take her back to the office. If she wants to talk to you, she will. If not, I just want to make sure she has somebody with her. Too easy. All right? 2 paragraphs here. Can I get a volunteer to read the top? This is kind of an end-of-day conversation. Yes, ma'am, in Houndstooth. You look like you volunteered. Would you read the top?
Earlier today, we had a good conversation. I felt I understood what your thoughts were. I wanted to follow up and see if you had any questions about anything we talked about today.
Super simple. Same things we just said, and then perhaps we'll rephrase it. If they don't have questions, here's another paragraph. Sean, would you read it for me?
I just want to let you know you're a valued member of this team, and if there's anything you need, let me know. But otherwise, I look forward to seeing you continue to make progress.
Super simple. And these aren't verbatim. These are some recommendations, phrases you could use to end the conversation. All right, last one. Sir in the blue, Polo, would you mind?
Hey, thanks for checking in. I know that was a hard conversation to hear today. I appreciate you sharing, but I want to make sure that the line is kept. If there's anything else that you wanted to share in the meantime, please let me know. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Good end-of-day conversation. Super simple. All right, these are some final thoughts. Confronting issues is essential. You cannot escape it. The cowardice of letting things fester causes you to not just be a distraction, but a disruption. Because you are a leader and people are looking for you to lead. And when you fail to lead, people fail to understand what their job is because they're worried about your job and you have to do your job. We can only focus on the things that only we can do. And as leaders, discipline is our responsibility. All right? Confronting issues is required. Plain and simple. So the consideration and planning that we provided and talked about today is going to certainly help you. But think about the process. If you don't fix it, who will? All right? I know we talked about a lot. It's a fire hose. I took a few minutes over, but is there anything with specificity that you'd like to address from any of the things we talked about? Pretty straightforward. Yes. All right. Either you all understood or you don't care. I don't know. Either way, we're going to the next slide. Okay, so these are some of the resources. Just finished a book called People Don't Quit Their Jobs, They Quit Their Bosses. Become the leader people want to follow. It's probably coming out in December. It's right now with the Air Force. They're reviewing some of the things that we talked about. I share some experiences from combat, and they just want to make sure that the Air Force doesn't look bad and that I didn't send or put out any tradecraft. So that's what we're looking for. If you want to follow us on Facebook, you absolutely can. Our website has a lot of materials as well. Lacey has a table set up if you want to be involved in any of our communication, but we are incredibly excited to be here today. We have some online resources, but I do generally about a 4.5, 5-hour seminar with about 14 topics. This is just one of the 14. So happy to connect with you and your teams if we can be of any value to you. Doug, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you for the time.
So I'm going to take an opportunity while Bob is getting that all squared away to say a couple of things about Bob. Obviously, he's introduced himself as the CIO of Steel Dynamics, and a very large company that does a lot of great things here in the community. Kind of a rebel of its own, the way it started. But Bob is part of our CIO forum, and I've often said to Bob in private, and I also say it in public, Bob's a very interesting strategic thinker. I've often joked that for some of you who are old enough to remember like the old E.F. Hutton commercials that used to be on TV, right? You know, you've got a crowded room of people talking and stuff like that, you know, are all over dinner, and the guy says to his table mate, he says, well, my broker is E.F. Hutton, and he says, and the room goes silent and everybody leans in. That to me is Bob. He has a very interesting way of thinking about things, and I've oftentimes had situations where, and Tom, if we can have, if you, Mike, can you help me switch that over, please? But when Bob says things, like he really has thought about it in ways, and I'll just give you one quick example, right? So we were at our CRO program, and we were talking about the requirements and things of that nature from a liability standpoint with insurance and everything else like that. So if you guys, obviously you guys are in IT, you know that nowadays with all the cyber risks and things of that nature, you probably got a sheet that came from your insurer that says, hey, you know, make sure you check these boxes, blah, 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 blah. And it's easy to default to the various different boxes and say, okay, my cyber program is done. I've covered all my bases and I'm happy because, you know, I've completed, at least I've, you know, taken care of the baseline. And Bob says, well, you know, that's okay if you want them to run your cyber program. But if you want to make sure that you are, in fact, taking care of your own program, doing the things that you need to do that's important to your organization, then you know you need to actually take this a little step deeper. And I know this sounds like common sense, but it's so easy to kind of default to the basics. So with that, I know that we're kind of flipping over to Bob at this point in time. That's the type of gentleman that Bob is, and I'm really glad that he's going to be able to bring some words about a very sensitive topic of vulnerability, being vulnerable as an IT person, especially in this day of what it's done. If you have a situation or problem and things kind of go south, and then you know we have the internet and you know social media and that kind of stuff that kind of keeps stuff with you. So with that, I know that they're flipping over some technology, and we'll get you squared away with Bob.
It takes about 4.5 to 5 hours. We can truncate it. I don't always steal time. I can learn. And so we have the opportunity to go into businesses, companies, leadership groups, and just talk about clear expectations and things like that. So some of the topics include, again, how to run a meeting, how to exercise effective discipline, and we talk about leadership fundamentals, which essentially helps people understand how to convey value and why it's so important. And so the main portion of that talks about how a team is not a group of people who wear the same uniform, and a team is not a group of people who are motivated to the same mission. A team is a group of people who trust one another. And so you've all been with people who don't trust one another and you haven't felt like a team, and so those are the things that we seek to develop. And as leaders, how do you eliminate distractions? Because these are the 3 roles of leaders. You eliminate distractions, you build other leaders. I'm drawing a blank. Lacey? I don't know, like they're very important, I promise you. I don't know, I'm drawing a blank. Leaders eliminate distractions, build other leaders, and when you understand the scope of leadership, you can understand the fullness of what you're required to do. So ultimately, we focus on developing that and helping your teams to work more effectively. But I'm not the consultant type. Like, I'm very much, hey, here's your training, and I hope you can implement it. I make it simple and practical, but I'm not, we don't sit and analyze why your team doesn't get along. There are other people in consultants who do that, but I'm simply jump in, 4.5 hours, help you guys work together, help you understand what leaders should do, and then pop out. But definitely happy to answer any questions. And if I can be a help to you or your team, Lacey and I are happy and willing to travel. Thank you very much.
Is there a price point on that, Jennifer?
There is. It's customized. If you're prior military, we do have military discounts, but largely we charge $500 per person. That includes a book. That also includes the opportunity for you to access our online leadership fundamentals course. And it's 40 minutes of me just talking about the basics of leadership. And so the intent of that, it's professionally produced. Lacey's a videographer, media by trade. And so if you would look at that, that will help your team to get a foundation. And on average, it takes somebody hearing something 6.8 times for them to absorb a concept. So if you hear that once there, and then you hear it once from me, and then you read it from the book, that's at least 3 times. And then if you talk about it together, that's 4 times. And so we just want to increase the likelihood that the information sticks. So we try to make it super simple. I try to be very clear. I try to provide illustrations. And so $500 per person, but we also don't want to be ridiculous. So we cap that at $7,500. And then if there's travel involved, we have a little bit of mileage. And if it's an early start, we ask to be there the night before. And so those are some of the things to consider when Lacey puts together a price package. But we are all about and intentional about building leaders. So that's our focus. It's not necessarily something where we're trying to like rake in all kinds of funds from all kinds of people. In fact, we only take 1 client a month on purpose because we want to be dedicated and focused on helping you individually. So that's the kind of thought process. For $7,500, you'll get top tier training from multiple decades of experience in the military, combined with the Air Force Academy's professional training that they've instilled in me throughout my career. Thank you very much.
So I am going to refer to my slides because this will be the first time that I've talked about this. Let me give you a little background. So I'm Bob Francis, I'm the CIO for Steel Dynamics. We're a vertically integrated steel company. We do everything from collect scrap at our OmniSource division through selling steel joists at our New Millennium Building Systems division. We are also in the copper market. Nick is here from our Copperworks division. And there we recycle copper, and we make rod and wire out of both recycled copper and virgin copper. We are entering the aluminum market. For a long time, we've had a company called Superior Aluminum that's in New Haven. But we are in the process right now of building the first aluminum mill to be built in the U.S. in 30 years. In Columbus, Mississippi. We've grown from 1993 to today from $0 in revenue to $22 billion last year. Largely, well, combination of greenfield construction and acquisitions, and we're fairly active for our entire history in expanding and increasing our footprint horizontally and vertically. My history with the company goes back to the beginning of the company. I was a consultant for 4 years and then came on as an employee. Absolutely love the company and haven't wanted to go anywhere else ever since I've been there. I wake up every day and say, if I don't want to go to work today, I'm not going to. I haven't had a day in 30 years that I've woken up and said, I don't want to go into work today. Lots to do. We're constantly moving. So I'm going to start off with something. Jennifer's still here? Okay. So I heard, this is the second time I've heard Jennifer, or been with Jennifer. The first time was in an REF meeting. She had some incredibly poignant questions. How she approaches management aligns very well with what SDI does. So I'm always interested to hear what she says. In addition to the book that she had there, I'd suggest, if you like what she has to say, there's a book called Crucial Conversations that encompasses a lot of what she's saying also. You can read that before her book comes out and then read her book. For my talk, when I talked to Clifford and Doug about talking today, at the time I was thinking a lot about various management books I'd read and trainings that I'm doing for my managers. And we put people through a lot of training courses. We suggest reading a lot of books. And there was a theme that I'd seen through a lot of the things that I'd read that I didn't think any book covered. I'm going to say in depth, and it's the thought of vulnerability in management. So I had a slide that brought up basically the history of management. And if you think back 500 years, you had management style that was very directional, top-down. You had kings and serfs, and management was you tell somebody to go and do something and they do it, or you give them some land and then you go and basically take half of what they make or more, right? So it had nothing to do with the worker. As you moved along, it kind of stayed that way until I would say right around World War II. Coming back from World War II, there was this change that started thinking about the individual and the individuals as a group, but it wasn't really focused on managing people. It was managing outcomes, task-oriented. You had a bunch of people, and they did this thing. Then I would say mid-60s to through the 70s, there started to be a lot of research done on just how to manage, and that moved into thinking more about people and how the people could do their tasks and how you make them a team. And then I'd say sometime in the 80s, somebody with academic background could probably give you more exact timing on it, because I'm sure it had to do with studies and papers that were going on. But it really started being more focused on the individual, how to support an individual in getting what they wanted to be done. And that continues to today. And when you look today, there's a lot of there's a lot of focus, as there should be, on people as individuals, and management today, I believe, is about giving people what they need in order to be able to get them as far along as they can until they had a boss that says reach their level of incompetence. Right, so you want to progress somebody so that you're pushing them, so that they're growing to the maximum point that they can grow. But everybody hits a point where they've hit the point where that's it. If you're looking at a career ladder, you don't go any further because you don't have the ability to. I will never be the CEO of Steel Dynamics. I don't have the skill set. I would be completely incompetent at it. So maybe I've reached my level of incompetence. But anyways, from a management standpoint today, there's a lot of developing your people, and part of that is getting them to trust you, right? You need to develop a relationship with them. That doesn't mean that they have to like you. That doesn't mean that you have to like them. You can have an employee that, as a person, you'd say, I would never go out for drinks with this person. That doesn't mean they can't be a productive member of the organization. It doesn't mean how they are is wrong. It's just your personalities don't click. From a management standpoint, it doesn't really matter. They should be able to trust you whether or not you like them or they like you. So I had a Kahoot that I was going to do. I wonder if I can still do it if I So how many of you know about, have ever heard about the Johari window? The Johari window? So, so the Johari window is, there's 4 quadrants to a Johari window. There's, so there's things that you know about yourself, right? There are things that you don't know about yourself. There are things that others know about you, and there are things that others don't know about you. So the question that I would have, and let me bring up the Kahoot because I think there's a picture of it. Well, you're not going to be able to see it because of the way I did the Kahoot. So, anyways, my question was going to be for you: what quadrant of those things that you know about yourself, things you don't know about yourself, things that other people know about you, and things that other people don't know about you? If you bring that up into 4 quadrants, for a leader, for people in leadership or people-intensive positions, which quadrant do you want to make the biggest? Both to both, so.
You want to make the biggest one, the one that both you
And the people know, correct. Correct. What you want to do is grow the things that you know about yourself and the things that other people know about you. The quadrant that is things that you don't know about yourself and things that other people don't know about you, in theory, you can find more out about that quadrant through hypnosis, psychotherapy, a hard quadrant to get there. Historically, if you go back 20 years and further, many leaders tried to make the things that you know about yourself and things that other people know about you as small as possible, right? Because it was a protection thing. They didn't want people to know things about you because that was a long time ago viewed as a danger, right? If somebody knows something about you, they can do something that makes you that hurts you. And I'd tell you that is still in movies. The strong leader that nobody really understands but gets things done is still portrayed, but it's not true. The idea of letting other people know things about you that they don't necessarily need to know about you is what helps you build a relationship. In order to do that, when you think about it, you've got to be vulnerable, right? Because you've got to be able to put things out there that that make other people understand that you're willing to be vulnerable and that there is a chance that they could, I don't want to say use the information, but ridicule you over or not sympathize with you about. But what really happens when you do it is somebody starts understanding that you're trusting them, right? And as you do that, the trust will come. The trust will come back. Will come back to you. So there's another slide that I had that was about a major study that was done, and it was of 20,000 leaders, leadership hires over 3 years, and what the study revealed is 48% of those people had problems within the first 18 months. Now I've got five different things that the people in the study broke down as, hey, these are the problems. So the 5 things are motivation, emotional intelligence, technical competence, temperament, and coachability.
Can you repeat those one more time?
Motivation, emotional intelligence, technical competence, temperament, and coachability. So, of those 5, which do you think caused the biggest problem that got somebody either disciplined or fired? Correct. Coachability is the number one thing that people had that people have problems with. What do you think the second one is? Nope. Emotional intelligence. Two things that are very big in management. If you listen to Jennifer's talk, you think about her story about the person, her subordinate that came in and said, "Hey, I've got this person. I want to discipline them. They're not doing their job. They're doing their job." That was a coaching session between her and her subordinate, and her subordinate was coachable, went out. The emotional intelligence question for her subordinate would be an interesting thing to dig deeper into, because she had to coach that person on, hey, go find out what's wrong. And for that person, maybe they should have already known that that's what they should do, because starting with any conversation with somebody about, hey, I'm going to have a problem with you, before you go to your whoever's above you in the chain of command, maybe what you need to be doing is figuring out the why. And the why is the emotional intelligence of, hey, does this person have, what is this person feeling? It's something that we miss a lot in IT, right? We're very fact-based. I know when I started managing, it was all about the facts, right? What a person felt about what they were doing on a project, it didn't concern me at all. It doesn't take long in management before you find out that you're not very effective like that. And if you're only like that, people quit pretty quick, right? People want to be on other teams. If you don't care about them, they're going to find someplace else to do, someplace else to go, something else to do. So that study was really interesting because, again, it was 20,000 people. It's very rare to have a study that is that large that is not college students, right? Most of these studies are done by college professors, and they do a study and they take in people that are in their master's programs and their doctorate programs, and it gives you kind of a warped, from a research standpoint, I think kind of a warped sense of what the world is like. Taking 20,000 people that have been just put into management positions, looking at where they've had problems and laying them down. The study aligned with what I've seen. When we're hiring, coachability is one of the first traits that we look for, whether or not we intend the person to go into management. It just makes them a better team member. So how do you become more vulnerable in a way that's intelligent? I think it starts with self-awareness. You've got to understand yourself, your emotions, your strengths, your weaknesses, an honest look at yourself. You've got to recognize that vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness. And again, I think that historically that is a change in how we look at managing people and how people expect to be managed. You've also got to embrace your imperfections, right? I may overdo this with my team, but if I see something in myself when I'm looking at it and say, listen, I don't do this well, I put it right out there, because what I'm looking for them from is help. I recently pulled all my leaders together here in Fort Wayne for a summit. Had a lot of grand plans for what we were going to do, started planning it 4 months ahead of time, got tasked with doing some things that pulled me away from it, picked my head out and said, oh my God, the summit's in 3 weeks. I haven't started planning it. I haven't started the agenda for what I'm going to talk about. Now, 6 months before, my plan was I'm going to reach out to everybody. I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to see what issues they want to talk about. I'm going to bring some people up for my team to do talks on their own, and grand plans of what to do. 3 weeks ahead of time, it's nope, I've got to put it together an agenda. I cannot tell my team, okay, I need you to do a talk on this because I hadn't given them time to prepare. So I did the whole thing myself and apologized 20 times during the talk because it was me up there talking about subjects that we really needed to talk about, but not what I intended to do. I got a lot of good feedback after the seminar from my people of, hey, listen, I like this, I didn't like this, and next time maybe you should do this. And I really appreciated that because what it told me was my people weren't afraid to tell me, you could have done this better by doing this, this, and this. And I'll take that into account, and on our next seminar, we'll do it better. With some of the things that I was thinking of and a lot of things that they were thinking of. So the next part is open and honest communication. And Jennifer talked to this a little bit about this. You can't avoid problems, right? You can't, there's multiple ways of resolving conflicts. Avoiding is sometimes the way to go, but not often. It's not a never, but it's not often. It's got to depend upon the problem and whether or not avoiding it is going to let it fix itself. That very rarely happens. You need to lead by example, right? So show your thoughts, but as you're showing your thoughts, be willing to listen to what other people have to say. And as I've said a couple of times in this, active listen, right? You've got to engage your team in communication and hear what they have to say, and not hear it just through the lens of what you want to hear, but what they're saying. That can be a tough one, and for me, that one actually, I can't do it in the moment. That actually, for me, requires reflection. Because when I'm having a conversation with somebody about something that I've got a planned path, what I've found in myself is that I often am steering them down the same path that I'm going. I've gotten much better at actually listening to what they have to say and not pounding them down the path that I'm going. But I still, when I'm sure I want to go in a certain direction, I in the moment don't hear what the other person's saying. Because I'm focused on where I want to go. Again, I've gotten better at reflecting on it and doing it. And then the last piece I'd say is to build trust. And this is again goes back to the vulnerability. But you got to build trust gradually, right? You can't just your position doesn't dictate that people trust you. As a matter of fact, I would tell you that the further up you get in management, the more your position makes people distrustful of you, because they tell you a lot of people figure that you got where you got by stepping on somebody else or by not caring. So what you gotta do is start with small sharing. Small things that are relatable, that help the person understand who you are over time and who you really are, right? Your flaws, your strengths, the whole bit. Consistency and reliability in how you act. Jennifer had said that she never disciplines when she's angry. You can blow a relationship with somebody and their trust in you by legitimately being angry about something that you should be angry about. When things go really wrong, and for reasons that you look at and go, that should not have happened, it's okay to be angry, right? Don't take it out on anybody. Let yourself cool off, look at what you need to do in order to correct it, and do it in a way that is measured and when you're in control of your emotions. the people that work for you will really appreciate that because they'll know when you're mad, right? And your ability to go and deal with a situation, not avoid it, not put it on forever, but dealing with it in the right way after you're over your anger emotion will make people trust you, and it will make them want to not get you to a state where you're angry. They will be more careful about what they do. They will think more about what they do if you're measured. And then I've said this before, the last piece of building trust gradually, or the third bullet point, because I always do 3 bullet points and never any more, never any less. Encourage feedback from your people, because when you're listening to them and when you really listen to them, that's a huge component of building trust. Now, there's a vulnerability aspect there too, because what you've got to do if you're really listening to them is admit you're wrong in cases, right? You might have this direction that you're going, and you say, "This is how I'm going to do it," and somebody comes up to you with a completely different idea or a different way of tackling it, and you think about it, and you go, "You know what? They're right. What you're showing, there's some vulnerability there, right? Because what you're saying to them is, listen, I told you this, and we should do it this way. You came to me and said this, and you know what? I'm telling you you're right," which doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong, but you're admitting, hey, you figured out a better way. And maybe you look at it and say, I was actually, given what you've told me, I didn't think that through. You're right, I'm wrong. But you got to be willing to do that. So when you think through this, that was a meandering way through the history of management and the Johari window and study and what you do. But these things are all in various. You'll read pretty much everything I've said in various books that are out there. And Simon Sinek in a couple of his books will touch on vulnerability. But it's interesting, when I read it, it's kind of like it's in a paragraph and then you move on to the next thing, and it didn't make sense. So again, when I was talking to Clifford, I was thinking, I want to stitch that all together. So apologize for not having the slides. I promise you it would have been better with them. The cahoots would have been fun. But yeah, that's all I've got. Any questions?
I want to thank Bob for recovering with all the technical problems. Good content, the vulnerability issue is huge. There's some studies that have shown that emotional intelligence goes down the higher you get in the organization, and that's a shame, right? Because we need it when we're individual contributors, and we need it when we're leaders. I will encourage you to, again, think about your own leadership journey. Think about how important it is to your direct reports that your leadership is healthy. Most of us manage away initially from a bad manager we had, or we manage towards a good one, and we often leave our team behind, at least on the first iteration of our management. So this meeting is really focused on that. I will keep you posted on what we're going to do in 2024. I'm just amazed at the number of people who've showed up today, and we are going to continue, no doubt about it. Please take my phone call or my email when I reach out to you in the next few weeks so that we can get appropriate feedback and move forward. Clifford, anything to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to also thank you for coming out. You all have homework now. There's at least a couple of books, whether it's the one that's coming out by Jennifer Ruth or the Crucial Conversations. And if you do not, and when he asked, and I didn't see that many hands, I saw my only hand, if you do not understand the Johari window, you should absolutely take a look at that. Johari window. And it's absolutely positive. And I wanted to again thank Bob. I'll just give the last comment that looking at things differently. A lot of times when we look at the Johari window, we look at the area that people know about you that you don't know about yourself. That's your blind spot, right? That's the king has no clothes on.
Yeah.
And he opened up a whole new section of the Johari window here in this conversation. So thank you again. And Doug and I, and a few of us will be around in case you want to chat with us. So.
Thank you, Jennifer Ruth.